The Pulse of Providence with Steph Machado on WPRI.com.
Thanks for watching Pulse of Providence. I'm Steph Machado. We are just about a month away from when the first votes will be cast in the Democratic primary for mayor of Providence. Mayor Elorza is term limited, and 3 Democrats are seeking to replace him this fall. Joining me in studio is one of them, Gonzalo Cuervo. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Steph.
So the last time that you were on the show, it was when we were taping virtually, more than a year ago. So glad to have you here in the studio for the first time. So you've been on the campaign trail now for quite a bit of time. Tell me, what's the most important issue you've been hearing when you're knocking on the doors of voters?
You know, I've been knocking on doors for more than a year now and meeting people in backyards, at events across the city in every neighborhood. Folks consistently talk about the same issues. They're concerned about the cost of, or the affordability of housing. They're concerned about the quality of schools, and they're concerned about public safety. And these issues transcend the boundaries of neighborhoods. And obviously, you know, there are a lot of quality of life issues that impact the city directly, but these seem to be the recurring issues.
What's the top issue for you?
I mean, I believe that if we look at those 3 issues and many of the other issues that impact Providence, there's one underlying challenge that affects all of these, and that's the opportunity gap in our city. You know, our city is on 2 divergent paths. There's one Providence for people who are upwardly mobile and doing amazing things in the world, and there's another city for people who are in survival mode and are slowly being priced out of their neighborhoods and have a hard time making ends meet. And the wider that gap gets, the more challenges we face at every level. The less our tax base grows, the less capability that the city has to provide quality city services, quality education, public safety. And so I believe that we can work together with the community, with political leaders, to really close that opportunity gap. And not only will that raise more people into the middle class, but it will also increase the city's tax base, and it will also increase the city's ability to provide quality city services. Everything ranging from cleaning our streets and plugging potholes, all the way to improving the quality of our education and keeping our families safe, which is priority.
How do you close that gap?
Well, it's, you know, through opportunity. 70% of our population are people of color, BIPOC. And if you look at the economic indicators in these communities, they're very low compared to the rest of the state and compared to other populations. And we need to invest. There are roadmaps. There are cities across the country that have shown that it's possible. We can invest in localized economic development. I have a plan as mayor to invest in neighborhood commercial districts significantly. We have a number of neighborhood commercial districts in Providence that have been neglected for generations. And the small businesses that have developed there almost on their own accord. You know, they survive on informal financing, or they refi their house, or they max out their credit cards. They have very limited access to technical support from the city and from other agencies like SBDC and organizations that were created to support small businesses. There's an opportunity for us to grow our tax base through small business development, and also by ensuring that our kids are prepared to be the workforce of the future, so that they get the good jobs and they can stay in Providence and they can buy a home and afford to buy a home and invest in our city and its future. You
mentioned city services a little bit. I hear from a lot of residents who say, my taxes keep going up, but I don't see the services that I'm paying for improving. There's potholes on the roads, the snow doesn't get cleared as fast as I'd like it to. Some people have spotty trash pickup on certain streets. How do you improve that?
It's through accountability. It's all about accountability and management. You know, I've spent more than a decade in City Hall working in a number of different management positions, and I know the challenges that the city faces. This is city government. We're never going to be flush with cash. We're never going to have an excess of resources. So we have to learn, and we have to figure out how to best utilize the resources that we have. And many times we don't do that. Many times we see there's duplication of effort. There's a lack of application of technology. You know, the city has a 311 customer service system that on the front-facing part, the public-facing part, is very cool. It's very sleek. It's web-based. There's an app. But when that request that you put in on 311 goes to the department, it turns into a paper-based request. You know, it goes from 2022 to 1996. And, you know, we can leverage technology and we can leverage know-how. There are a lot of great people that work for the city that are willing to do more if we give them the tools and the opportunity to do more and the training.
Now, that would cost money to upgrade that 311 system. Where would you get that cash?
I would say there are many places to find money. The city has a pretty extensive budget, and budgets are about priorities. What are our priorities? The current administration found $5 million to give the Superman building developer. We could find money to upgrade the 311 system, which would cost considerably less than $5 million.
And you mentioned accountability. The city does use private contractors for some of the services like trash pickup. Would you, for example, fine waste management, as city ordinances do allow the administration to do, if they're not completing their contract correctly? Absolutely.
But one of the challenges that we've had is the Department of Public Works has reduced the number of environmental inspectors that are out there checking up on the job that our vendors do. And we have the same situation in our inspection and standards and in other departments where through attrition over time, we have not replaced positions in order to save money, and the result is in the product. You know, there are jobs that require humans to actually go out and look at things and inspect things and follow up on things. And I think that that's one area where we could significantly improve the quality of services that people receive. I have a lot of experience doing this. I spent more than a decade working in city government, and I understand how these processes work. It's not something that I'm going to arrive at City Hall to learn about.
So you would hire more inspectors in DIS?
Well, we'd first have to do an assessment of the department and see how the current staff is being deployed. You know, sometimes these departments can become top heavy. Sometimes you have a lot of people in administrative roles and not enough people actually on the street doing the work that needs to get done, the work that impacts the lives of taxpayers and business owners in the city.
Second quarter fundraising numbers are going to come out on August 1st. One of your competitors, Gonzalo Cuervo, released that she raised $52,000 in the second quarter. Will you say how much you raised?
We just about doubled that number.
Okay, was that your best quarter yet?
Yes.
Listen, there hasn't been any public polling in this race, but political observers believe Brett Smiley is the front runner. Have you done any internal polling?
We have done polls, and we're in a very good position. We're in a very competitive position with Brett. And here's the thing, we're working every single day to reach people. This race is going to be run on the ground. We've seen the last 3 open mayoral races in the entire 21st century have been won by the ground. The ground game has beat the money game every single time in the 21st century, and we plan on repeating that trend.
Can you tell me anything about what your poll showed in terms of the numbers?
It's a heated race. We're very close. We're very close.
Okay.
He has some parts of the city where he's strong, and we have some parts of the city where we're very strong also.
I know you were working on sort of making a play for the East Side. That's of course where both of your competitors live. How is that going?
Yeah, I mean, that really hasn't been. We have a very strong base on the South Side, and we have a strong base on the West Side of the city. And obviously, we aim to represent, when I'm mayor, the entire city of Providence. This isn't about picking favorites. This is about being a mayor that understands the city, that has worked across the city, that knows how to get things done for residents, taxpayers, and business owners across the city. And I believe I am that candidate, and I will be that mayor. My history of work in the city transcends boundaries. I'm not a Southside candidate. I'm not a Mount Pleasant candidate. I'm a candidate for mayor of Providence, and I will represent everybody in the city of Providence equally.
If you couldn't vote for yourself in this race, which of the other two would you vote for?
You know, I think both candidates have strengths and weaknesses. And since I will be voting for myself, I plan on voting for myself.
Do you see any scenario where you and Councilwoman LaFortune would team up against Brett later on in the race down the summer?
I mean, Councilwoman LaFortune is running a brisk campaign, and I would be happy to welcome her to my team if she so chose to do so.
With 3 Democrats in this race, the 3 of you agree on broader social issues, general Democratic Party platforms. So where exactly do you think you differ the most from your 2 competitors on
There
policy?
are 2 areas where I would say I differ the most. First of all, the experience. I have a lifetime of experience on the ground as a community organizer, as a small business person on the South Side who, like many people today, were scraping together a living with very limited resources, as a nonprofit leader with organizations that impact all over the city, and as a person with more than a decade of city experience, in addition to my time as Deputy Secretary of State, where one of the biggest responsibilities that I had was managing the Secretary of State's legislative portfolio and getting her initiatives passed in the legislature. And we saw some great success in that regard. The proof is in the pudding. It has positioned her very well in her current endeavor to be the next governor of Rhode Island. The other thing that differentiates us is that I understand that I'm running for mayor because cities are about people. We can talk about infrastructure. We can talk about doing a great job sweeping the streets and plugging potholes. Ultimately, what we need to do is make sure that the city is sustainable for people, that people can afford to live here, that people want to live here, and that people can live here safely and send their kids to great schools. If we focus on that, we will be succeeding. You know, that is the focus. That is something that aligns with my values and that aligns with my track record over the last couple of decades.
What about policy differences, though?
Policy differences? Well, I believe that we need to build more housing, and I have a plan for that. It's on my website. I believe that we have to focus on arts and culture as what it is. Arts and culture encompasses two very important parts of our city. First of all, it's our identity. It represents who we are, and it sells who we are to the world. And I think that we are such a unique place. We have such a unique sense of place that we can leverage that to attract people from all over the world. And we see it already. People who come here, they stumble upon Providence and they fall in love with the city. They end up moving here. And there's this fascination with our city. The other piece is that we can use arts, culture, and tourism as an economic engine. I think it's been underutilized. I think we don't realize the extent to which the arts, culture, tourism, and even the nightlife scene has an impact on our economy. It creates jobs. It brings money into the city. It brings money to the state. It fills the state's coffers.
We've talked about policing before on the show, and folks can go back to your first interview to hear what you think about sort of reimagining the police department. I do want to know, though, would you keep Colonel Hugh Clements on as police chief if elected?
I think Hugh Clements has done a fantastic job. I think he's a cop's cop. He's a wonderful person. He has very strong relationships in the community. I would like the opportunity to meet with Colonel Clements when I become mayor and really have a conversation and an assessment of the department's operations and where it is in different areas before I made that determination. But my sense is that he has been a fantastic chief, and I can't really think of any immediate reasons why I would consider replacing him.
And what about Commissioner Perry?
You know, I don't think, I'm still not sure that there is a role that the role of police commissioner as it exists currently is necessary. I think what we've seen over the past couple of years is you end up having this kind of dynamic where the police chief loses autonomy and has to basically abide by what the commissioner says. And I'm not exactly sure that that role is healthy. I think we should have a fire chief who is the best possible fire chief we can find, and I think we should have a fantastic police chief, which we currently have a fantastic police chief, and they should be able to A, do their job, and B, be held accountable when necessary.
So we haven't had a fire chief in 6 or 7 years. Would that be a priority for you to hire one?
I think it's important. I think we've hurt morale, and we've also heard another opportunity. We've heard an opportunity to pursue federal grants and to pursue funding opportunities to make sure that our department is at a state-of-the-art level, that our men and women on the fire department are receiving the training that they should be receiving. There are a lot of opportunities there, and the chief's office is not just a ceremonial office. It's an office that pursues those opportunities and that finds grants and that finds resources for the department and that leads the department. And I think when we're talking about a hierarchical structure and there's nobody at the top for years, that is demoralizing to the rank and file, because these are organizations where people plan out their careers with the hopes of rising through the ranks and maybe one day getting to that top position. And we have basically told the rank and file of the fire department that top position is irrelevant. It's unnecessary. I think that's unacceptable.
One more thing on police. The license plate cameras are being installed as we speak, and they're not on yet, but are scheduled to be turned on as soon as later this month. I asked all three campaigns what they thought of this, and you had concerns, you wanted the implementation to be delayed. Explain what you think of these cameras that we've been reporting on.
So as far as I can tell, the city is partnering with a private vendor who is going to install 25 cameras at no cost to the city on police cars.
Correct.
That is going to
No, not on police cars. They're on poles.
Yeah, on poles.
Taking pictures of cars.
And they're scanning information on cars, and they're capturing the license plate number, and they're capturing a lot of other information. There is no clarity on what information they're capturing, what they're doing with that information, where that information ends up, how long is that information stored for. Technology is moving at a very fast pace, and technology can be incredibly helpful. And I'm sure that camera technology is incredibly helpful in solving a lot of crime. But there needs to be regulation, because we cannot let our public policy and our privacy be determined by private vendors. And we have a state legislature. Rep. Solomon of Warwick introduced legislation this past session to regulate those cameras, and not so much the camera, but the data that is collected from the cameras. That legislation died, and the city council hasn't had an opportunity to weigh in either. And I think, look, we all want safer streets, and we all want to leverage technology to the best of its ability. But these things need to be regulated. We don't want to end up in a situation where our private information is being bought and sold on the market in ways that we aren't even aware of, because years ago we thought it was a great idea to get some free cameras.
You voted, I believe, in favor of the $515 million pension bond. It's unclear if Mayor Elorza will be able to borrow that money for the pension system because the interest rate needs to be below 4.9%.
The total cost of borrowing has to be below 4.9%, and I believe we've already exceeded that threshold.
So if you're mayor and you have to make this decision, would you pull the trigger on this as soon as interest rates get low enough, or do you have another plan for the pension?
No, I think we have to bring experts around the table and really assess the conditions when that time comes. We want to make sure that, in the past where pension obligation bonds have failed, they failed because the cost of borrowing, the spread between the cost of borrowing and the rate of return on our pension fund was so narrow that as soon as there was any type of dip in the stock market, we were underwater. And we don't want to be in that position. We don't want to be in a position where we're paying back $500 million plus we're making additional payments to cover a hole in our pension fund, which was the original issue. I think what we need to have is, that's one tool, it's one possibility, but it's not something that we should rely on. We need to be strategic about growing our tax base. We need to hold our large institutional nonprofits accountable so they're paying their fair share, which will also increase our tax base. And we need to invest in our neighborhood economy so that we can continue to grow our tax base. This is how we grow out of a problem. The pension obligation bond was a tool. It's a tool. It's a solution. But it's a solution that only works under certain circumstances. And there are circumstances where that tool could bury us. And we have to proceed with caution.
Do you support or oppose the proposal to create a hybrid school board in Providence? It would be half elected, half appointed. This is currently being considered by the city council to put on the ballot for voters this fall.
I think that hybrid proposal is would not be effective. I think we have to decide, do we want a fully elected school board where people have the opportunity to run to represent their neighborhoods, and I believe it should be separated by wards, right? Or we should have a fully appointed school board. Because what happens when you have a hybrid school board, if you have 10 members, 5 are elected, 5 members of the public have to go out and raise money and knock on doors and run a campaign. The other 5 are appointed by the mayor. Let's say whoever the mayor is, regardless of who the mayor is, the mayor would only have to figure out how to convince one of the elected folks to have a majority. And so we're right back to where we started. So I think we should make a determination. I'm for an elected school board. I believe in civic participation. It's part of my life work. Even long before I was in the Secretary of State's office as a community organizer, I think when people participate and people speak up, good things happen. I'm all for an elected school board. But this hybrid approach is kind of like a wishy-washy solution that doesn't really change anything.
I have 2 more quick questions for you, Gonzalo. 1, have you asked Mayor Elorza for his endorsement?
I have not.
And why not?
Because we haven't had the chance to speak in a very long time. We encounter each other at events very briefly and just basically have quick conversations in passing.
You don't want his support?
I'm not saying I don't want his support. I'm saying we haven't had that conversation yet, and it doesn't seem like he's in much of a hurry to insert himself into the mayor's race. Yes.
And then who are you supporting in the race for governor?
I am going to be voting for Nelly Gorbea for a very basic reason. I worked closely with Nelly for 6 years, and we got a lot done at the State House. And, you know, I think that she would be a fantastic governor, and I'm very proud of the work that we did. And I can look forward to working with her, continuing to working as a team, me as mayor of Providence and her as governor of the state of Rhode Island.
Gonzalo Cuervo, Democratic candidate for mayor, thank you so much for coming on the show again and for coming into the studio.
Thank you.
And a quick reminder, if you want to vote by mail in the mayoral primary, you must request a mail ballot by August 23rd. You can start voting early in person at City Hall on August 24th, and the primary election day is September 13th. Thank you for watching Pulse of Providence. I'm Steph Machado. We'll see you next time.